Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. Unshaved, unbathed, unedited, and unscripted, and fueled by some good organic coffee from Peru. Grown in the shade and fair trade. So, petulance is the topic today. Petulance. A number of Democrats are starting to realize in far-flung corners of the globe, actually, in Great Britain too, that Bernie or bust is not going away. They've been trying to ignore us. What I've been seeing is my daughter's in the United Kingdom right now. What I've been hearing and seeing is that people in the UK despise Donald Trump, leftists at least in the UK, and so what we have there are people criticizing us from across the pond about Bernie or bust. So I wanted to show you a little bit about that. This little cartoon down below my picture here says it all. This is the kind of banging on our gilded high chairs response that we're starting to get, and I'm going to give you an example of a conversation that should happen over and over and over between now and February if there's any hope of defeating Donald Trump. So one thing giving this argument traction from the Bernie or bust side is how Elizabeth Warren is becoming, in Bernie Facebook groups and on Twitter, it's becoming clear that Elizabeth Warren is not passing the sniff test for progressivism. So more and more progressives are looking at her actual billionaire donor list, her connections to the Clinton machine, her continuing connections, that's what we talked about yesterday and earlier, her continuing connection to the Clinton team, and what the Democrats, the mainline Democrats, don't care about any of that, but what they're noticing is that the left flank of the left flank cares a great deal about that, and that Elizabeth is unacceptable. They were sort of relaxed and simmering along nicely in their frog pot when they thought that maybe Bernie supporters would go for Warren if they screwed Bernie again. And everyone knows they're going to try to screw Bernie again. And what they're seeing is, no, Bernie supporters on the very left side especially are in no way willing to support Elizabeth. Not only Bernie supporters on the left side, Bernie supporters on the far right side who would make a choice between Trump and Bernie and no one else because they perceive both Trump and Bernie to be populists. Crystal ball, as usual, is on point.
Yet, when Hillary Clinton ran for president in 2016, once it became clear that Hillary would be the nominee, Warren jumped in to endorse her. This despite the previous tough critique, despite a long friendship with Senator Sanders, and in spite of seemingly sharing much closer ideological ground with Bernie Sanders. Well, whatever Clinton chits Warren earned by endorsing Hillary over Bernie, I guess she is hoping to cash in now. Let's not kid ourselves that there is any policy or campaign advice that Elizabeth Warren is looking to get from Hillary Clinton. No way.
Nope.
She's after something else. Look, Hillary may be incredibly unpopular in the country at large. She may have proven to be a disastrous candidate. But that Clinton machine still has power. Still has power within the media. Just witness Rahm Emanuel on the Sunday shows being rolled out to trash Medicare for all. The media knows Clinton World, and even after an embarrassing defeat, they continue to fill panel after panel with Clinton World acolytes.
Clinton World. I hope that takes off. I hope people start using the word Clinton World. It's a little bit more I don't know, in your face than the Clinton machine. Clinton World. Clinton World. Sounds like the New World Order.
And Clinton World still has a lot of power, too, with party insiders. Consider those superdelegates who lined up in near lockstep behind Clinton. Now, the DNC has changed the rules such that superdelegates cannot vote on that first ballot. But with such a big field and a fairly even split between the top three, it's not so hard to imagine a brokered convention where superdelegates do become central.
Yes.
And in that scenario, Clinton's support would be key.
Yes.
Clinton could help convince that group of party elites that Warren is a safe consensus choice, a team player, so to speak.
Yes.
Recall that according to Jonathan Martin's reporting over the New York Times, that is exactly the message that Warren herself has been pushing in her aggressive overtures to the Democratic insiders. And as you're watching these primaries unfold, be sure to pay close attention to who people rely on for their base of power, who they are in debt to, so to speak, because those are the people who will get their calls answered. Those are the people who will be in position to apply pressure. So Bill Clinton was backed by business interests, and they got NAFTA. W was deeply tied to oil interests, and they got Iraq. Obama was loved by Wall Street, and they got their bailout and no jail time. Or you could take the example that Elizabeth Warren herself proffered about Hillary Clinton on the matter of that bad bankruptcy bill. When she was senator, when she was reliant on Wall Street campaign contributions, she was suddenly able to find a way to support a bill she had once fought to kill. So we'll keep our eye on this latest development. But there's one thing I can tell you for certain. You do not get the benefit of the Clinton machine for free. There is a price. Is Warren willing?
Is Warren willing? Yes, she is. I'll show you. Now, here's an interesting conversation that happened on Facebook that I submit must continue to happen. The article is the 25% rule, numerical proof that the left flank must be heeded if there is to be any hope of defeating Donald Trump. This conversation is raging right now in British and American politics if you're interested in joining the conversation. So in this conversation, we have the petulant brat reaction from Casey Cosmic. So the left wing is threatening to re-elect Donald Trump if they don't get exactly what you want? Fuck the left wing and fuck you. And then Lynn Marie comes back with, I hold the same level of disdain for neoliberals as for other types of elitist bigots. And then we have a series of ad hominem attacks, and those conversations you've probably seen in your neck of the woods. Seriously, says Casey Cosmic. Seriously, this is why everyone hates you lunatics. Every time we see a My Way or Trump post from far lefties, that's another branding tool of the Blue Dogs, the far lefties, marginalizing, right? We're not mainstream at all. The 75% majority digs in their heels. I assure you, do you think threats from the minority fringe nutters will actually scare us into voting for the socialist grandpa, there's another branding trick, that lost to a neoliberal by 4 million votes? Give me a fucking break. It's not an empty threat. Do the math. It is an empty threat because you're a bunch of fringe nutters. You don't have the numbers, so go ahead and throw your fit. And then go fuck yourself. LMAO. And then the data come. What Sanders voters actually did in the general election, what we see is a big chunk. Let me show you this. A big chunk of the voters voted directly for Trump in swing states, like more than 12%, which is devastating. And these aren't polls. This is actual voter behavior from exit polls. The impact of these votes was significant. In each of the 3 states that ultimately swung the election for Trump, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Trump's margin of victory over Clinton was smaller than the number of Sanders voters who gave him their vote. So there you go. Sanders voters made sure, and will again in those states, more easily this time than last time, will again ensure that Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Light, won't win in those states either. It's not even a stretch to say that. And this is where the petulance and the banging on the high chair comes in. Over 20% of Sanders supporters say they'll vote for Trump. And the biggest chunk of those Sanders supporters will vote directly for Trump if it's Elizabeth Warren. I think 26% of Sanders supporters say they'll vote for Trump if it's Elizabeth Warren, more than for Buttigieg and Beto and Harris. So they really do, the people who would tend to vote for Trump really see that they really equate, they seem to equate Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton. Here's an article, quote, "Don't blame me, don't blame Susan Sarandon, don't blame Bernie or bust, don't blame young people, don't blame Russia. You have only yourselves to blame for what happened in 2016, and if you screw this up again, the entire planet will be dancing ever closer to the edge of the abyss." That went over like a lead balloon. Let me put it straightforward for you. The grand majority of Democrats and independents are moderates. You will follow us. We won't follow a cult-like minority of Bernie bros. There's some more branding. This all came right from David Brock. This all came right from the astroturfing on Reddit and on Facebook that was funded directly by the Clinton machine. Casey here is quoting right from the playbook, and we know exactly where the playbook came from. Unlike you, moderates aren't petulant children. Everyone's arguing about who's the child and who is the parent, the grown-up in the room. We can vote for the greater good instead of protest vote. There's another branding, protest vote, if we don't get our every demand. And then we talked about the Bernie or Trump folks. They had a big ugly stick in 2016, and there are even more of them now. Now, I should say here that we're not interested in the Bernie or bust movement to get people to vote directly for Trump. But we can't control the Bernie or Trump voters. We can't tell them what to do. Nobody can. So what we're saying is not vote for Trump. We're not telling anyone to vote for Trump, but we're saying that you can't just wave your hands in the front of the stampeding herd and tell them to stop. They're not going to stop. Nobody can make them stop. And so there we go. We have Trump if we don't get behind Bernie. And nobody in the blue team, mainline blue team wants to hear that. And I quoted Thomas Piketty in this article, and Lynn said from this article, French economist Thomas Piketty, author of the best-selling 2013 book Capital in the 21st Century, also wrote the paper Brahmin Left versus Merchant Right, Rising Inequality. Casey is coming at this argument from the vantage point of an elitist. She is spouting the same elitist claptrap that the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and MSNBC are spouting. And so if you don't bring in the data about the poor and the poorly educated, then you'll just risk thinking that we're talking only among the political class. The conversation she's having would actually make more sense if we were just talking to people who typically vote and people who live in the suburbs, but that's not what's going on this time. And Bernie is the candidate who will bring the poor and poorly educated to the table. Then Casey tells Lynn that she's about to get kicked for spamming if she doesn't chill. Go take a nap. Set down the meth pipe. That's also pretty typical in these conversations. And what it really comes down to is the math. Now, Kieran picked this up, this petulance. He said, Bernie or bust types are the definition of selfish. Anyone who still thinks that there's no difference between the establishment Democrats, he puts it in air quotes, and Donald Trump really hasn't been paying any attention to anything that has happened in the world for the last 3 years. That's also right out of the playbook. You're going to get that argument a lot if you're having these conversations. And I hope you are. I hope you're having these kinds of conversations every day until February 3rd. He says they lost the right to lecture the rest of us and blame us for foisting Trump on them. What they don't say is that they're putting inelectable candidates in front of people. Bernie or bust is the answer to cyanide versus a gunshot to the head. There are not and will not be enough mainline Dems without bringing the left flank on board. The left flank of the left flank will not vote for anyone but Bernie. And this just, again, something that we need to just keep telling them over and over and over. Because the elitists want Elizabeth Warren, and the numbers here show that 22% to 12% of people earning less than $50,000, but voters with postgraduate degrees who are probably earning more than $50,000 prefer Warren 19% to 12% for Sanders. So we've got less privileged voters for Bernie, and Bernie is the one who can bring those people to the polling places. We've got a whole army of Bernie Sanders volunteers who are going to help, and that's not happening anywhere else in the blue team. Kieran goes on. You want your little revolution, Lynn Marie? Convince Bernie to run as vice president. They want Bernie to be a lapdog. Yeah, we gotta put these conversations in their place. If we go here to this article, if we combine the statistics about the 25% being a fairly solid bloc who won't vote for, say, Elizabeth Warren, certainly not for Biden, if we combine that with the widespread fear of Donald Trump, any potential recipe for success must acknowledge the fact that a solid 25% will not vote for anyone they believe to be an establishment candidate. All right, let's run ahead here to Jimmy Dore. This is why this is what happened last time. This is the petulance that we need to address.
It's showing like how ridiculous their system is, and they keep saying, after 2016, they're like, oh, we heard you, we don't want to, the superdelegates are a problem. They're still using them. They just trim the number back, and they're pushing them into the second ballot.
Correct.
Which is just a tactic, as we know
That's right.
They're going to use to screw Bernie and Tulsi.
Yeah. They're like, well, how do we still keep control? Oh, I know. We'll just push it to has Elizabeth Warren in because she did that deal with Hillary Clinton last time, not to A, run, and B, not to endorse Bernie Sanders. Because if she would have endorsed Bernie Sanders, he would have kicked her ass in Iowa and New Hampshire, and Hillary Clinton would have been out of the goddamn race.
Right.
Did you hear that? I never heard anyone put it quite so succinctly before.
Pushing them into the second ballot.
Correct.
Which is just a tactic, as we know
That's right.
They're going to use to screw Bernie and Tulsi.
Yeah. They're like, well, how do we still keep control? Yeah. Oh, I know. We'll just push it to has Elizabeth Warren in because she did that deal with Hillary Clinton last time, not to A, run, and B, not to endorse Bernie Sanders. Because if she would have endorsed Bernie Sanders, he would have kicked her ass in Iowa and New Hampshire, and Hillary Clinton would have been out of the goddamn race.
Right.
That's what the article, the Medium article I wrote about the ties of the Clinton machine to Hollywood talent agencies. That's where that comes in. And so it's pretty obvious, based on the WikiLeaks email that I talk about, that there was a deal. Jimmy just comes right in and says it. They made a deal to keep Elizabeth out last time, and now she's in with a bunch of other superdelegates and delegates for Hillary, lots and lots of them. Tulsi is the only one who was a superdelegate for Bernie. All the rest of that field, other than Andrew Yang and Marianne Williamson, all of them are superdelegates or delegates for Hillary Clinton. And so there have been lots of deals cut, and we can see right where the Clinton machine is, just as Crystal pointed out. So we have to get over this shit. We have to stop this petulant trying to keep power. We have to say, if you don't like Trump, then you have to unite behind Bernie. And if we point out that they probably are a lot more afraid of Bernie than they are of Trump, then they'll really start to go crazy, and they'll really start to scream and bang on their high chairs. We need all of these conversations, or the majority of them, to be over before February. We need to get all this out and talked about well before then. We don't have until next November. We have to get this done now. So please join in. Please go to the Facebook groups. Please go to the Revolt Against Plutocracy rap sheet. It's a Facebook group that's linked underneath this video. And we'll give you the list of Facebook groups. We'll get you involved. You can roll up your sleeves and start to get into these conversations because they have to happen. We can't just post links and bump links. We have to have conversations on Facebook, on Twitter, on Reddit, anywhere, Instagram, anywhere we can to get all of this information out and all of these temper tantrums finished in time. So please join me. I can't tell you enough. Please join me. I've got my contact information below. We really need to get going on this. I hope you have a great day and keep on burning.